Welcome to the Witty and Gritty podcast, where we believe that lifelong learning and relentless determination are essential to developing your passions and reaching your goals. Here to help you along the way are the hosts of the show. Take it away, ladies.
Hey y'all, I'm Brooke.
And I'm Farron.
As educators and high achievers, we're passionate about providing our listeners with effective strategies to help navigate life's obstacles and reach your goals sooner.
Join us as we break down credible research that gives you a fresh perspective and challenges your limiting beliefs.
Laugh and grow as we share personal anecdotes and interviews from people that have demonstrated what it takes to be successful.
By implementing these practices, you will develop your unique skill set and learn how to better serve your community.
Get your mind right.
And enjoy this time designed just for you.
Farron, we are in a brand new mini-series.
Oh man, it's sad to let the last one go, but excited for new adventures.
Yes, this is episode 103. We've broken over. We're in triple digits.
That's a lot of numbers to say.
We're old ladies in podcast years.
Yes. I wonder what the conversion rate is on that.
It's like dog years, I
guess.
guess.
Man.
Podcast years.
Dang. We're old.
Okay, so the new book is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and the tagline is an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones.
I know all of us can think of some bad habits that we know we probably need to let go of.
If you can't think of one, ask your best friend or your spouse.
I bet they'll help. So helpful all the time. Maybe not. Just pick the right moment.
It's out of love if I say with all due respect and then say it.
What's love got to do with it.
Man, that's
Is that another jaw rule?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Gotta do. I wish I could imitate Ja Rule, man.
We'll work on that.
I've got a special place in my heart for that person.
We got the symbols down, right?
For the record.
No.
You
always do it better than me.
No, I'm sandpaper.
No. See?
No, you've taught me.
I do the P, lip thing, and you get it every time.
Well, that's a really long intro to Atomic Habits.
We have a habit of segueing smoothly, so here we go.
That's who we are as people.
We are. We need a new identity.
Sounds good. We'll get into that in a little bit. So the way the book study mini-series is broken down this time, there's going to be 6 parts to the book part. And today is part 1 of part 1.
Yes, and if you're new to the mini-series style, we follow it up with 3 interviews, and we interview real-life human beings that are doing big things, and they're living out the principles in the book we're covering.
That's true. Not to be confused with animals or aliens.
Yes. Human beings.
Beans?
That's how you gotta say it.
Beings.
Beans.
Human beings.
Beans.
Human beings. Is that the Nebraska and you coming
fruit.
out? Is that what they...
No, I just feel like a countryside is coming out today.
Welcome.
So there you go.
I'm proud of you.
Theater. That's another one.
Yay tree.
All right, so James Clear, he's a pretty neat guy. He has a really unique and interesting story, doesn't he, Brooke?
He sure does. So we have a place in our hearts for college athletes, and James Clear was one. But before this, when he was in high school, he wasn't even really thinking necessarily hardcore baseball college player. He actually ended up taking a full swing of a bat to his face. He almost died. So he has this whole story full of details if you're into the medical stuff or if that's what you're into. He goes and describes it. Do you remember the blowing his nose part?
No, but don't remind me.
I won't, but it is, I visualized it and I can't unsee it, so there's that. So basically, the way he recovered from this critical, almost deadly injury, and he transformed himself into a really solid baseball player.
Hey, who doesn't love a comeback story?
Yes, not only that, but he figured out, he basically cracked the code on how to get 1% better every day. So you'll hear him say that throughout the book if you listen or read Atomic Habits. But he talks about how he did this with his study skills. Oh, well, can I do this with my baseball skills? Oh, yeah, wow. Okay, well, can I do this with whatever pocket of life? And he ends up being able to find a system that works.
Which is a good point to bring up, that this idea or concept will apply to anybody for any purpose.
That's true.
Yep.
And even so a lot of times when people get through this book, they say, okay, James, cool, but how do I make my kids have atomic habits? Or how can I involve this in my business? Well, if you buy the book or buy the audiobook, he constantly lists out where you can find resources, and he has added bonus chapters about how to apply it to parenting or how to apply it to business. Super cool.
Yep. If you haven't got your copy, be sure you check it out at our blog site,
wittyandgritty.blog/Atomic Habits 103.
Yes. It sounds good. 103.
Okay. Part 1 of Part 1 officially starting with Chapter 1.
Yes.
No surprise there.
Part 1 is called The Fundamentals, Why Tiny Changes Make a Big Difference. Chapter 1, The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits.
So this book, I get to nerd out, so that's always exciting. But it's like The Slight Edge meets Switch on Your Brain meets Grit. Like if you combine different principles from those 3 books, it equals Atomic Habits, which is really cool.
I definitely feel like this is a accumulation of all the topics we've covered in the last couple years, and we love actionable, practical steps around here. So it's not just, oh, that's a neat idea, now I got to go find somewhere else on how to do it. He's got you covered.
Right, and if you have listened to our Grit mini-series, episodes 19 through 25, that's going to be a really good foundation for this book. Or the Switch on Your Brain mini-series. So one of the main points he brings up in Chapter 1 is that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement, and getting 1% better every day is going to count for a lot in the long run. Just like how after you have a kid, you're not going to bounce back the next day unless you're a freak of nature, which congratulations, because someone needs to have that superpower.
Someone's got to. You know, on the bell curve, there's always the, top of the cream of the crop.
Top.
Yeah. And then there's a bottom, and you're not alone. You are not alone. Yes.
I'm not alone.
Stop it. Yes, so one thing that I took away from this first chapter was that small changes don't seem to make a big difference. And given the life phase that we're in, I'm speaking for both of us, making small changes oftentimes feels like a really big change.
Yes.
And then it's hard to stay motivated. I think motivation's a big word in our community. Like, how do you stay motivated? And it's hard to stay motivated when those quote-unquote small changes aren't giving you immediate results. And so I love the illustration. I've shared it before, but I'll share it again, of the ice cube in the freezer. And so if the freezer's at, 0 degrees and it moves up 5 degrees, you're not going to see the ice cube melt. And then not at 10 degrees, not at 15. And man, I went up 15 degrees and nothing's changing about this ice cube. Imagine stopping when you get to 30 and you're like, man, someone on the outside's looking like if you had gone 3 more degrees, that sucker would be melting. So it has me wondering, how many times do we quit or give up on a good intention, something that we were originally motivated for, because we're not sticking around to see the long-term results?
I love that ice cube analogy. I'm such a visual person. And how we've talked about it before, it's the person standing on the podium, but it's the view from the backside, and the podium is built out of little bricks that say, like, hard work, sleepless nights, recovery, injury. It has all the things that they actually went through to get to the top. A lot of times people will be like, wow, that person came out of nowhere. They were an overnight success. No, they weren't. If you dig deep enough, you're like, ooh, the beginning. So, like, if you go back to our first episode, I have not listened to it, and I don't know if I ever will. But it's just one of those, like, there we go. You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Look at us now.
Agreed.
Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa.
This is a good one. It's that whole perspective shift. So once you realize you're not the thing that you do. I mean, like, I mentioned it maybe a few episodes ago where I broke out of the coaching, and I had a hard time being done with coaching because I identified as a soccer player / athlete / coach my whole life, when really I should have had my identity founded in Christ. So that little mindset shift there. And Farron, you've mentioned it a couple times before. You use the phrase, what would a healthy person do in this instance? Or what would an athletic person do in this instance? Or what would a self-disciplined, or whatever your vice is?
What would a patient mom do in this instance? Yeah. What would the mom that I want to be do in this situation. Yep. And sometimes it's tough love, and sometimes mommy needs a timeout. It just depends.
Everyone needs a timeout every once in a while.
Please. What do I got to do to get a timeout?
You're doing one right now. Good job, Farron. You're with me.
What'd we do?
No, we're here and we're not...
Oh, we didn't get in trouble? That's good.
Okay, so one of the points that I liked in this chapter was your identity emerges out of your habits. And every action you do is a vote for the type of person you're going to be. So when you are in those moments like, ooh, should I eat the bowl of ice cream? No, eat one scoop.
Yes, you can be
or
like
not eat ice
some
cream.
people and leave the spoon in the tub of ice cream in the freezer. And then you don't have to even wash it so often. Just one scoop.
And sure, if you're trying to like wean off of things, like we've talked about this with social media, if you can't cold turkey something, then okay, then I'm not going to do this night of the week or during these hours. Like I'm not going to have dessert every night this week. Maybe I'll just pick 2 nights. However, whatever your vice is or whatever your goal is and whatever system you're putting in place, a way to think about that is, how am I going to cast my vote right now in this moment?
Yes. So still on this topic, talking about your beliefs and how it becomes your identity. I see this a lot with the students I work with. So I work with students that have been identified as having dyslexia, and the later that they're identified, the more that I see they've taken on the identity that they are dumb or they are stupid or they can't read. And so what I love about my job is it's definitely reading instruction, but it's also a whole lot of therapy and reframing how their outlook on themselves and their abilities. So I tell them a lot that, I'm going to believe in you until you can believe in yourself, and you are not dumb, you have dyslexia, but guess what that means? We know you can learn to read. And so I kill them with science and facts to combat their lies that they tell themselves. And I talk to them a lot about the brain and how when you have those negative emotions, it releases those toxic chemicals, the negative chemicals in your head, and it affects your long-term memory and learning. And so that's where it starts, starting with facts. And I think that's what a lot of people can do too. We talk a lot about holding up what you hear between your ears to God's truth in the Bible, and starting with that truth and then building from there.
Yeah, and if you are wanting more brain science-y episodes so you can have that evidence, it's Switch on Your Brain episodes 55 through 62. Had to look that one up. You can't bat 1,000. No one bats 1,000. I'm not Jesus.
Okay, you're .999. I don't know how many nines they put on the baseball things, but you're straight nines.
Sure.
From a 9.
I don't really know all the baseball facts. But if you are also having trouble with the between your earsness, we did a mini-series on Jenny Allen's Get Out of Your Head, and that starts on episode 84, and it goes through 91. So there's that if you needed to use those 2 things.
The good news is you can change your identity, and James Clear talks about using your habits to do that. And so we'll get into it a little bit more later, but every time you choose is a big part of this, to do a positive habit, right? Because habits could be a good or bad habit. You're voting for your new identity. And so again, back to the students I work with, I use a lot of their data and where we're at in the dyslexia program to show them how far they've come. And so I bet you guys could do that too. I bet you could look back on a time when, you were further behind than where you are today.
Right.
And so it's important to stop and take a look at where you are. And that, again, for good and bad. Maybe you don't think it's a bad habit. Maybe you need to take a look back 5 years ago and look at, your health or your quality of life or where you're at in your career. And then maybe you'll see like, oh, maybe this is having a bigger negative impact than I thought it was. So
I like how you're referencing 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, particularly the reflection piece of it. And I'm really glad we started out with that book because it just set up a great foundation. So that's episodes 1 through 8. But there was a big bit where we talked about reflection and we talk about journaling all the time. So being able to look back and see how God's got you through certain things, or you've been able to cracked the code, or he's helped you, or you found community. Look at all those little breadcrumbs. What is it? Success leaves breadcrumbs?
Success leaves trails. It
Yeah.
could be trails of breadcrumbs.
Right, Hansel and Gretel. Who knows?
Or Pringles.
Yes.
I would follow that
you
trail.
are a chip person.
I love
Ooh,
a good
a
chip.
chip.
Yes.
Oh, that is funny. Okay, chapter 3, which is titled How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. And I like how he throws in all the psychology. He is well versed in all this stuff. He talks about case study after case study, and he has come up with the 4, it's called the habit loop. So it's the cue, craving, response, reward. So the cue could be, so think Pavlov's dog. He ended up being able to get his dog to salivate just by ringing a bell once he got through the experiment. So what's the cue? And that cue is going to trigger a craving, which is going to trigger you to do something, and then you get the reward.
Yes. And I know that this can sound overwhelming. Me as an Enneagram 9 is like, oh my gosh, so much energy to exert on these habits they're talking about. But let me tell you, having read the whole book, I'm not going to give anything away yet, but he says here in this chapter that the purpose of habits is to solve the problems of life, get this, with as little energy and effort as possible.
Hello, 9s.
So yeah, if you've read other habit books and it's been complicated and it's been hard to stick with, this book is set up with the idea that we're going to try to have better habits with as little energy and effort as possible. And I'm telling you, it's possible. So stick around. We'll show you.
Right, we're on the other side of reading the book, so it makes sense in our heads. So just stick with it like Farron was saying. So that habit loop, that cue, craving, response, reward, he has taken those habit loop laws and has helped you come up with a system on creating a good habit or getting rid of a bad habit. So that would be, if the cue is the first law, then it would be make it obvious. So that could be a vision board, that could be putting your shoes right by your bed if you're going to go work out in the morning. Well, and we'll get into all of that. The second law is craving, so making the habit attractive. Third law is response, so making the habit easy. And then the fourth law is reward, making it satisfying. And like you were saying, Farron, it can sound overwhelming right now in this first episode, but we will break it down for you step by step. And for you to read further, he breaks it down even more and he's so good he is so good at examples. And I love that about this book.
I do too. So all my 9 friends, did you hear that? Third law, make it easy.
And 3s.
If you're still on the fence about whether to continue reading or not, he does bring up, and these are questions I've asked myself before. It's like, why do I keep doing the thing that I don't want to do? Or I said I was going to do it and I couldn't stick with it. And I know it's important, but I don't make time for it anyways. So if that is you and you've had that self-reflection, then this is definitely the book for you.
Right. In this whole section's part 1, he talks about how everyone's goal might be the same. Like everyone in the NFL wants to win the Super Bowl, but only one team gets to do it. So it's not having that specific goal that gets you there. It's the process and the system that you're doing that gets you to achieve your goal. So this book is about implementing a system that has worked over the course of time through any pocket of life.
I'm glad you brought up the goal thing, because if you're like, I've done all this work, I know that these goals are aligned, I know that I have my, low, medium, high goals, why am I still not making progress? Next step are your habits and your systems.
Right, so we will get to that next week, so stay tuned, everybody.
Talk to you later.
We help hardworking Christian women get the growth they want by giving them the tools they need in order to have more joyful lives.
We love providing our Christian-based personal growth podcast to our listeners at no cost. If you are enjoying the content, please consider supporting our mission by donating to our Patreon.
We're a small team creating the show for our community by researching, recording, and producing the episodes ourselves. Any amount is greatly appreciated. Your support will help offset the cost of making and hosting the show.
As a thank you, you can receive exclusive access.
For more details on specific membership tiers, visit our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/witty and gritty. We've included the link in the show notes.